Welcome to season 4 of the 15-ish minute coffee chat, a conversation every business owner needs to hear. This week, we're very excited to have Dan Martin of Borehole Image Specialists. He's a business owner in a very specialty field, but niching requires keeping a close eye on industry changes. Today, we'll be discussing niching, specialties, and how that can help or hurt your business ventures. As we get started, though, we'd love for you to drop an answer to this question in the comments. Is your business specialized or niche, or are you all over the place? No, welcome to the 15-minute coffee chat. Yes. Anyway.
Yes. It's been quite a week, but we're super excited about our guest. He's got an interesting background in something I know nothing about. I don't understand. But we were saying right before we came on how fun it is to be able to invite guests on that have a completely different industry background and still have something in common, simply because we're all entrepreneurs, we're all business owners, and we're all struggling with some of those same concepts and ideas that go along with that, as opposed to industry specific things.
No, I was excited about it because I think like when you can format your show like this, it's like, hey, we're all kind of in the same boat as far as being a business entrepreneur or business owner. There's this common denominator that I love that brings it together. And I was telling Anna this last week. I said, I worked in the restaurant business, and you could have every walk of life come into the restaurant, right? So you get to meet and conversate with lots of people. And I can tell you, I had like a huge football coach. I had celebrities. I had professors of the university. Like my conversation was different. I had a vet from the Korean War that was like really popular in the Hawaii speaking thing. So it's just saying like, you can, like, our show, which I love, is that we can have a conversation with just about anybody and really have a good time. And they're not like this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we get too far into the conversation, let's introduce our guest and bring him on so he can be part of it. All right.
Yeah. So I'll read this time, right?
Yeah,
just a little bit about it. Okay. I'm excited because I need to practice some of these big words that I'm like a little scared about. Okay. So Dan, he has worked in the oil and gas industry for 16 years. He's got a very specialized job that allowed him to map the complex geology of Capitol Reef National Park. He started his own business in 2016 with a partner tailored to help the fast-paced changing oil and gas industry. And he's married to his beautiful wife, Rebecca, and they have 4 children. They live in Colorado. They enjoy outdoor activities, reading poetry, and World War II spy novels. Ooh, I'm digging that.
No, right?
Yeah. Well, Anna, why don't you bring him on? Let's say hello.
Right. Bring on Dan.
Hi,
Dan. We're so glad to have you here. Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yay. Okay. Bear with us, Dan. I know we're going to be a little, we're extra, but you know how this family rolls. And as I point to the Anna Larson over there. Anyway, welcome to the show. Before we get started and get into it, we don't want to miss it, but we love to take our coffee cup selfie with our guests. So you guys, if you're watching, just take a little selfie, but on 3, 1, 2, 3. Yay. Thank you, Dan. Cheers.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
So Dan, we read your bio.
Yes.
And it's like I mentioned earlier, it's in an industry I know nothing about. So can you just dumb it down for us in layman's terms? What do you do?
Sure. So the name of the company is Borehole Image Specialists. So after an oil company drills an oil well, oftentimes they send tools down the well bore, down the borehole, usually on a cable. And then they bring those tools up, and those tools measure the rock properties of the rocks down the wellbore, down the borehole. And there's lots of different types of tools. There's ones that shoot electricity out into the formations. There's ones that bombard the rocks with nuclear, gamma rays, that sort of thing. So we look at a special type of tool called a resistivity image tool. What that does is bombards the rocks with electricity, and then it reads the conductivity and resistivity of the rocks, and then makes an image, makes a picture. And we analyze that picture for fractures and the tilt of the beds and what the rock fabric looks like. And there's lots of things you can do with that. So it's really a useful thing. It's like having a picture of what the rock looks like down thousands of feet down the wellbore.
That's wild.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's cool. So
you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned something earlier in our conversation before we came live. You said that there were only 200 people in the world maybe that do what you do. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, because isn't there like 1 trillion people in the world? So the fact that you were one of 200, that's, talk about niching down, guys. Like, that is a niching down in a specialty for sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. He's like, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, are we gonna talk about that? Why it's good and bad today?
Yeah, we'll get to it. But Anna, wait, hold on. Let's ask. Oh no, we have to talk about our toolkit, huh?
Yeah, we're going to talk about our toolkit really quick. So, so everybody understands, we always ask our guests, like, what's one thing you cannot do without in your business? And Dan threw us his moleskin notebook. And then we threw in the more techie side of that, which is the Rocket book, which both Selena and I have. But Dan, tell us for a minute, what is your moleskin notebook to you?
I've been thinking about this question. When I started college, I did a bunch of field work. To get a degree in geology, you're always out in the field, like looking at stuff and taking notes. And when I was in the field, there's these classic Ride in the Rain notebooks that I carried around and constantly had with me. And so I got in the habit of having like a tactile thing that I could write notes in. And so when I started my career doing this for a living, I said, well, what's a similar, I loved this. What's a similar thing? And so I've basically been carrying around one of these notebooks for years and years now. And it always comes with me, sit in my bag, or sitting in my pocket. And it's fun to look through these things because it's almost like a diary or a journal of my entire career. I've got all these notebooks.
Yeah.
Every project I've ever worked on. It's super analog, but I just love something about pencil on paper is just a wonderful thing to me. So.
Yeah.
But it hits a lot of the sensories, right? Like when you touch the notebook, it kind of like reignites a memory or something with that feel. I know that's so silly, but that's, and I mean, I could go on about it.
You are asking for something that I use every day, and that absolutely I use every day for notes.
Yeah. No.
Well, so it's interesting to me because I both use, I use an online organizer and I have a paper notebook. And so when I'm in my meetings, I absolutely have to have a paper notebook. There's no way I'm taking effective notes, trying to type it or do something organized online. But the Rocket book, which we threw up here, in case you don't know what the Rocket book is, it's kind of like the best of both worlds because it allows you to go ahead and write in a notebook. And then it's got a QR code at the bottom of the page that will then scan it into your Google Drive for you or wherever you want it to go.
Cool.
Which I love. And then it erases, so you never have to get a new one.
So it's environmentally great. You know what I mean? And so we did write some notes of this is what I did, right? I Googled, why is it better to write than type? And this is what came up. It activates the brain. It improves your spelling because we all know that autocorrect is not part of your hand jam. It helps you remember and it helps you think faster. And I will remember the first time I realized this was I was with my cousin in California, and she was writing out probably 100 envelopes for an invite for something. And I said, "Oh, why don't you just use the label and print it on?" She goes, "I do this to keep my brain smart. It's the only thing I do for myself, and this is what I do." So And I was
I
like,
am surprised in the comments that everyone is responding with paper notebooks, legal pads, moleskin notebooks. So for a hugely techie audience, I'm loving that we're all like reverting to that moleskin notebook that Dan Martin cannot do without.
Yes, can't go trusty. Right. And again, you have more than one.
Well,
Do you think, Dan, you could like eventually make all these notebooks into a book at some point? Like, you know what I mean? Like, could they be like?
Maybe it's an interesting idea for my posterity. Here you go.
You know what I mean?
They may be undecipherable is the problem.
Right. Because when they have
one of 200 people in an industry, I think you could probably find something interesting to say about that.
They're going to have a statue for you. And you just want to be like, here is all my memoir stuff. Here is my 1,000 moleskin books. And then that's going to go in a museum. Just saying. That's what I think. Just prepare yourself, right? Your great-great-grandchildren and be like, yep, this is great-great-great-granddaddy Dan. And this is his legacy.
I'll be bored.
Oh my gosh.
If you're just tuning in, pop in the comments. Are you a paper notebook user or are you a techie, take your notes via computer user? We want to know.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Shall we move along to our next thing?
Yeah, we're going to move along to our mental health question of the day. And so we instituted that this season where we brought in a mental health specialist, and then she shot us a bunch of questions that we can ask our future guests. So
I'm laughing.
Our question for you today is...
You guys, hold on. Normally I have to download my banner to come in, and here's what's hysterical about technology. Dan's like, this is why if you use pencil and paper, it works. So usually... I'm going to click it so you guys can all see. It will not cover any of our faces. But today, in my lack of sleep and rush, I did not do it correctly. So you're not going to see it flash up. But Anna knows what question to ask you, Dan.
Yes, because I also did it like this. So look, mental health question of the day. How have your recent successful ventures impacted your outlook for your future or the future of your work in the field you're in?
That's a really good question. So the oil business, like many, many businesses for many people this year, was greatly impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic because people weren't driving. If you remember in March and April, basically we were at home, everyone in the whole country, except for a very select number of people. And that was happening worldwide. There was a time in April when the price of oil went to nothing. Or less than nothing.
Wow.
When that happened, oil and gas companies basically shut down oil production because oil wasn't worth anything, or not enough to be worth drilling for. And that greatly affected my business because we just didn't have any work anymore. That happened for a lot of people. Interesting. A lot of people got laid off and are still laid off. Because I work for myself, I didn't lay myself off, but it brought up a lot of interesting mental health questions and challenges. And it really did make me consider the future of my company, the future of my work in this oil and gas field. And frankly, I don't have the answers yet to say, well, I worked through it and this is the answer. I'm still trying to figure out what to do. Me and my colleagues think that there's going to be this profession and my niche job for a long time, but we're not sure. And so, it's like, well, what do we do about that? We and I have tried to have a good mental attitude about it. I've tried to do things that were fun, which I enjoyed, to keep my mental health and my spirits up, but it's been tough. So I know that this is not unique. That there's probably hundreds of people listening to this podcast, and there's millions of people in the country that are facing similar problems. It's really a kind of a tragic thing that's happened. So
Yeah, I mean everything from the restaurant industry, servers and hostesses, all the way, especially hospitality, all the way to oil and gas, which isn't something that you stop and think about would be affected by COVID necessarily.
Yeah.
But to hear like a year ago we had the oil and gas pricing was, like you said, zero, next to nothing or below nothing.
Yep.
That's going to have a huge effect on everybody that works in that industry. I didn't stop and think about the ramifications of everybody staying home. Nobody's driving to work. Nobody's going on trips. Everything's closed down. So that's really industry. That's interesting because your industry and what you do is so specialized. And so it doesn't leave you a lot of options to like expand and find different ways for growth in your business.
Luckily, with the turnaround in the economy and also the turnaround in the price of oil, we have gotten quite a bit of work this year, and we're actually back on track to have not a bad year. So the question is do I want to pursue this for the rest of my career? Do I want to try and change and get out of this highly specialized field that I work in? And those are ongoing questions that I don't have the answer to. I don't want to. I really enjoy what I do, but I don't know. I wish that I had like concrete.
No, this is just a casual conversation. You don't. But what I'm hearing though is like what's really interesting, right? We're talking about niching and how you're very niche in your career and like your business. But then it's like, how about when you decide when you want to unniche, if that's the proper term, right? Is like, absolutely. I'm sure a lot of us are like, hey, I niche down and now I think I think that's the question. Like when do you decide to unniche and come out of what you really love? And how long, do you stay in your niche? I guess will be different for everybody, right?
Well, and even what it would take to move to something different, like would you have to go back and get different certifications or schooling or specializations in order to branch out into a broader area? There's all these things that would come into play if you were thinking about, because how long have you been doing this? In 2016, you started your own company, but how many years have you been in this industry doing this?
I started when I graduated from college, and that was in 2005.
Okay.
So I got this. It was really, usually if you're going into petroleum geology, the usual kind of workflow or business flow is you go and get a job with an oil and gas company somewhere. And I didn't do that. I knew a guy who had a job and he offered me this job. And so we moved to Oklahoma City where they had just opened up an office, and I started doing this thing that I talked to you about it. And it's really been my career so far. It's really enjoyable. There's lots of pros and cons, lots of pros about it. There are some cons. But, it's interesting how you find your career. Usually, I guess most people, and for sure me, I just took the opportunities that were in front of me, and following that succession down the career path leads me to where I'm at right now. And there's been times of great success, and there's also some issues sometimes. So it's really an interesting path.
That comes with being an entrepreneur though, right? Is that there are those risks, and you just have to. I like what you just said though about like, you grabbed what was in front of you and you kind of went with it. And were you scared? Were you nervous? Like, true question. Like, was there the scare, like nervous energy?
Absolutely. Every path you take is a step into the unknown. Every step you take is a pathway into this unknown area where how do you know what to do and what's right? You just have faith in yourself, and you got to feel good about things, and you find something that interests you and that you like, and then you go for it. And, I started working for this little company, and we were quite successful, and I really enjoyed my job. Part part of the reason I've enjoyed my job is that even though it's highly specialized, it's this really niche thing. In a way, it's not niche at all because we're looking at one little aspect of a oil company's data. We look at data from all over the world. I've looked at the geology from many places overseas and all over the United States. It's in that way, it's not specialized at all because I'm almost a generalist in the subsurface geology of the world. And that's exciting too, because it's hard to get bored because there's always like, oh, well, what do the rocks look like in Pennsylvania? Or what do the rocks look like in California? Or what about in Colombia? We did a bunch of work in Colombia and I got to go down there. And what do these rocks look like? And how about in Egypt? You know, what are they exploring for over there? That's exciting and fun. So
I love the multicultural aspect your job has afforded you. Like in that sense, like it is very interesting and exciting and fun. And so when you're looking at where you're at now, and you said this year is, starting to flow out to be a pretty good year for you in that sense. So so can we flow right into the next question, which is kind of the our big espresso shot question, which is what are the pros and cons of being specialized, and what advice would you give to entrepreneurs that are looking to niche down? So I've heard you say a couple of different pros, and I've heard you say a couple of different cons, and you're in kind of this unique zone where you see changes happening in your industry where you're going to be forced to do one thing or another in order to keep your business going. Yeah. And how do you decide what to do there when you're in this specialized situation?
There's one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about that's related to this, and that is that the oil and gas business has gone through this like massive upheaval in even the time of my career, from the beginning of when they started exploring for oil till about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. Generally, the principles were the same. They were looking for the same sort of rock formations to find oil in. And then there was this massive technology breakthrough, which people call the frack revolution, fracking. It's hydraulic stimulation. When that happened, which is like this massive technology influx into the oil and gas business, it changed everything. The way that people explore for oil and natural gas has changed a lot. And so I've kind of been there and seen how this technology revolution has really changed everything. And that's been very interesting to see. And it's really affected my job too. The way that we look at borehole images is different, way different than it was when I started my career. That's fun and exciting to see a technological massive change. It's also worrisome because, for instance, people use borehole images less than they used to for a variety of reasons that we could get into if you want, but it's pretty technical. So,
we wouldn't understand it, even if you would like.
No, that's okay. But it's really an interesting thing to watch the industry that you work in have this like massive technology upheaval, and for good and bad. And it's hard to predict it. If I'd have known what I was going to get myself into when I started, I guess I probably would have followed the same path, but it's hard to go back and make those, or think back and say, well, what should I have done, or what could I have done? So one of the pros about working for myself, being an entrepreneur, is that, like I said before, it's hard to lay yourself off. I guess if you don't have any work, you can just shut your business down.
Right.
I've got friends that were laid off last year and haven't been able to find a job anymore. And I've really enjoyed and I think benefited from this opportunity to, say, have a wide client base who I have relationships with and have worked for years and years. And I am their go-to person for this specialized service. And so as long as I can keep and cultivate that client base and those relationships and be on the cutting edge of this analysis that I do, I think that I will always have a job as long as the industry is using these tools to, to understand the rocks. If they stop, then that's the con. Then I maybe have a job forever,
Right. So if your industry makes you obsolete, there's really nothing you can do about it. But I love what you said, because even though you're in this specialized, unique position and in an industry that, not a lot of people are part of in the entrepreneurial world, the things you said were you developed great customer relationship, you provide a great service, you stay at the forefront of what you do by being in the know of what's happening now in your borehole specialist world, right? And ultimately, that's what is keeping your business afloat. And I loved that, because I feel like that applies across the board to anyone that's thinking about niching or specializing. I'm a copywriter, right? So I do not niche right now. And I've often wondered if I should. Should I only focus on copywriting for a specific type of industry? Would that make me a better copywriter? Would that allow me to, have more specific long-term clients? Because right now it's all over the place for me. And I haven't taken that step to do the niching, like, what we're talking about now, but it is something I think about often. Yeah. In terms of, would it be good or bad for my business? And in this sense, I love that your pros are across the board for every entrepreneur. Yeah. It's not just specific to your industry at all.
Yeah. Can I just comment too? And one of the things you had just said, Dan, was, in your specialty, though, you became like the go-to person, right, for this specific, in your niche, obviously, you know what I mean? And so I think like a pro, though, is, hey, this is the go-to, this is the guru, this is the magical genie that's gonna like get what we need done. Like when you niche, because if you're almost too vague, it's kind of like, there's like, hey, the client or whatever is like, I'll just kind of fish. And not that you can't also still be the go-to if you're not niched, but there's more of you, right? I don't know. I like that when you said that.
There are more of you, so where you're at now currently, are you looking at avenues for expanding your specialty services, expanding your niche a little bit, so that if there is that massive upheaval in your industry, which would make your job obsolete, I mean, just, putting it very plainly, you would still be able to do what you love, maybe in a different way?
Yeah, well, we're on the cusp of a renewable energy revolution. Oil and natural gas are going to be part of the energy budget for the United States and for the world for a really long time. It's the cheapest, most reliable source of energy for the country. And I think it makes up something like 60% of our energy needs, and especially transportation costs. But things are changing. Even in our association, American Association of Petroleum Geologists, there's been more and more and more talk about how to take the skill set that we've gained in oil and gas exploration and how to use that and move it on into things like geothermal energy and that sort of thing. And that's actually something that we have, me and my colleagues have been trying to get into. It's like, well, how do we take our skill set and find new opportunities? And frankly, we haven't been that successful yet, but that is something that we've put a lot of energy into and are trying to find that avenue. And I think as those other industries pick up a little bit, that may create some space for people like me that we can kind of do both things or everything. A lot of the principles from oil and gas, a lot of the techniques, tools, and technology from oil and gas actually translate into these other more renewable type energies anyway, especially geothermal. It's kind of a similar deal. There's drilling, you got to understand the fractures, you got to, follow a path and understand heat flow. It's kind of a similar thing. So
I'm like
Hopefully.
nodding my head like, yeah, I totally know what you're saying right now.
I'm like, yeah, it's that genie talk that you're talking, because I'm going to say Ray just said this, Dan. He said, oh, I like Magical Genie. That's going to be your new nickname. But yeah,
The fact is that oil and gas are going to be part of the equation for a long time.
Right.
There's no way to get around that. And natural gas is really a nice, it's very abundant in the United States, first of all, and it's not as polluting as coal or oil. And so it's going to be part of our energy consumption for a long time.
Yeah.
As nuclear and other things come more.
Right.
So what would you say is the answer to the last part of this question, which is, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to niche down?
Yeah.
Like, what's one word of wisdom? What would you say?
Well, you've got to be really good at what you do.
That is so smart.
You've got to be really good. You've got to have a product that people really want and need and appreciate from you yourself. And if you can be good and people see that, then you can build that niche for yourself.
That was really awesome.
Right? That was the perfect answer.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But in a nutshell, be really good at what you're trying to niche down to.
Yeah.
So that the niching down works for you. Why you went down to the niche. I mean, if that's like the way to say it, but you know.
Yeah. And probably you have to really love it too, because if you're going to spend all your time on that one niche, you better really like what you're doing for it in that sense. And you're right. If you're only mediocre at doing what you do, it's not going to be a very good fit. Right.
Right. Right.
I love that, Dan.
Yeah.
It just kind of like summed it all up in one smart sentence there.
Sometimes you don't even mean to do it. Like I was saying before, I didn't intend on doing this thing. It wasn't my goal. It was like I'd found myself down this path, and here I am. And I do really love it, and it's really enjoyable for the most part. And here I am. So
and now here you are.
Talking to you guys.
Here you are on the 15-ish minute coffee chat. Talking about business. No, you know what? I mean, I loved like when Anna had brought you up as like a potential guest like a couple months when we were getting this together. And I was like so fascinated because I'm like, no, I don't even have anybody in my circle that is in this zone of genius. You know what I mean? And I was like, there was some nervousness because I'm like, how do you talk to somebody that is in his field? And she's like this. And I was like, oh, okay. You know?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is just that even though he's in the specialized field, he still is an entrepreneur. And so the same kinds of issues that I have as a copywriter and you have as a web designer, social media managers, and then the borehole specialists that look at, the rocks under the ground in boreholes. Like, we all still have the same business things affecting us. And one of those is this. Do you specialize? Should you niche?
Right.
Do you need to make yourself a bigger asset to a specific industry in order to really excel and succeed at your career that you've chosen as an entrepreneur? And so I find it super interesting that Dan has been able to do that. I'm just going to talk about you like you're in the third person right now, Dan.
Right.
But I find it interesting that he's been able to do that. And now he's in a position where everything's changing. Where do you go from there? And I like your vulnerability in being able to say, I don't know, honestly. We're not at a point where you have to make a decision. And you just kind of, part of it is you just have to wait and see where the industry goes and what they're going to require from you. But I also love that on the side, you and your partners are looking at other options just in case. It's a smart way to do it.
That's the business side of, right? That's the business part. Like, there's the doing what you love part, and then there's this okay, I have to market my business. I have to run my business. I have to pay people in my business. I have to, you know what I mean? That has nothing to do with right. So
yeah. How do you find insurance and what are you supposed
Yeah.
to get? And what about contracts? And
right.
should we hire a lawyer to look through our contract? You know, there's lots of interesting
Yeah.
questions that I had never thought about when starting a company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't have to do much of that because one of my colleagues kind of takes that and does
That's their role. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, thank goodness. Thank you, Roger. But you know, I'm still part of it and have to be in on the decisions on how things work.
Yeah.
For the most part, and
right.
What are we going to do? And you know, so
yeah.
No, for sure. Anna and I, you know, we redo projects together, and there's things that she handles in the project, and there's things that I handle in the project because it just makes it easier. You know what I mean? So we all have to have a Roger. So Dan, I got mine right above. So you know what I mean?
We all have to have a Roger. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be my quote. It's going to be like, have a Roger.
Really
yeah.
Roger's really great. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. No, I love it. I want to kind of pop up where people can find you, Dan, so that way they can kind of learn more about what you do and how important it is. And, you know,
I'm just
maybe you have questions.
Yeah, I want to just tell everyone, go to their website because the first image on their hero header on their website is just breathtakingly gorgeous. But okay, Dan, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah.
Well, call Ann and she'll give you my phone number.
A direct line.
Directly.
Yeah.
But here's our website. bhigo.com, and sometimes I use that Instagram handle too. I don't know. I'm not that social media savvy, so
right.
Well, I don't know. Do you have to be as such a specialized niche? Really, you don't need to advertise the same way some businesses need to advertise.
I think you could just show gorgeous photos of like what you're doing, and that's awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Can you imagine like you see gorgeous formations and how like over time that's like, I don't know all the right words, Dan, so please forgive me, but just, you know what I mean? Like you could put it on a wall as an art. It's just, sometimes it's so beautiful, you know?
That's the thing about geology is it's always so visual and interesting.
Yeah.
It's it's funny because I get this magazine from my college at school, and it's the College of Physical and Mathematical Sciences. And so it's like math and chemistry and geology and biology and stuff. And always on the cover of their of this little magazine is always geology. It's because that's the thing that's like the eye pop and that's the interesting thing, even though it's like a small percentage of that.
Right. That's the eye candy to capture the audience, right? Like this is my hook. Yeah. So then I'm going to give you all the other stuff.
There's your takeaway, Dan. Now you know how to maximize your Instagram account.
Right.
Well, luckily, I'll just name drop my other colleague, Ron Parker. He is a really wonderful photographer, and he is the one that took that picture of that image that's on our website. He's really great.
Oh my gosh!
As well as being very smart. So
there you go. Rope him into it then.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
I love it.
Yeah, if you're interested in hearing more about what Dan does, then you can find him there or reach out to me and I'll track him down for you and we'll get you all connected.
Yeah. Dan and his wife will get random phone calls. Hi, I know Anna, and she said I could call you to ask you a question. I know it's 2 a.m. in your time, but I can't sleep, and I need to be told about this. You know. I guess we are nearing toward the end, I guess. Is that
I know. Yeah, it's time to wrap it up, but let's throw up our tip jar. So we have a financial tip for all of our entrepreneurs out there who are listening in or watching the show live.
Anna, talk about it. Tell about it.
So listen, here's our tip this week. When doing your monthly bookkeeping, set a timer for 20 minutes of work. and then 5 minutes of rest. It's going to help you get through everything in a quick fashion. So listen, if you're like me, what this is basically saying is don't dedicate an entire hour, because by minute 40, you are going to be ripping your hair out in frustration. Because you just don't always get it, right? So 20 minutes of a strong pace, and then take a little bit of a break and catch your breath again, because I am not a CPA. I'm not a bookkeeper like Caitlin Eldridge is. And so, you know.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing, and I use her just to say, and I just want to do just a little shout out. We are so excited that we get to also stream live into the Milspouse Creative and Entrepreneurs with Moni Jefferson, and Caitlin is also part of that group. So it's great to be able to feature somebody that is also in other places. But anyway, that's just my thing. That's all I'm going to say. Yes. So that's our tip.
All right. Yeah, so before we say goodbyes, we just want everyone to know that next week we have Desiree Martinez, and we're going to be talking all about YouTube and how you can maximize YouTube for your entrepreneurial business.
Dan, you could easily make YouTube videos with what you guys do.
That's a really great idea. I have never thought of that, but you're right.
Yeah. And make it interesting, like for the people like us that don't get the tech talk, but would love to see, like literally see what you're looking at. Yeah. Like, I mean, that would be interesting.
I want to see the process of like, I'm going to get this rock. They're always into that before and after, right? Like this is the process of us getting an image, thousands of feet under the ground or miles, whatever it is. No, we can't. Don't ask me. I was not good in school. I'm going to exit out. This is the girl that should not be in the same room as Dan and Anna.
Whatever. Like I do. I would have said feet and then gone or miles. Or I don't know. I don't know. Long well drill holes. I don't know. I live in Texas. I have no idea what goes on here.
I told Dan I was really nervous. I mean, like I'm sweating under my armpits because I'm like, I'm going to say a wrong word.
Okay, so listen, for everyone, you can find us at andaandselena.com, on Facebook, on YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform for the 15-ish minute coffee chat. We would love for you to subscribe. And if you took a coffee cup selfie, then hashtag us at hashtag 15ishmcc. We'd love to see it. And we're getting ready for a new season. We only have one more guest for this season. So that means a new video featuring new coffee cup selfies. So we want to see yours.
Yeah. Okay? Oops. So Dan, thank you for giving us your time. And I wanted to just say one more thing. I did know what fracking was. Wait. I watched it in a movie and I was like, oh, I know a word he's saying, but I couldn't, I just want to put that out there. Okay. But Dan, thank you really for taking the time out of your day to hang out with us.
Yeah.
And talk us about your business.
Yeah.
How you do it.
Yeah. I found it really interesting, this whole specializing thing and kind of the good and the bad that comes along with it.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see everybody in next Monday. Oh yeah.
Look, we got one last comment from Jenna. You need a person like that in your life. All right. Okay, guys. Dan, we'll catch you backstage real quick, but thanks for joining us this week.
Bye, everyone. Bye.